Well, everyone, you've heard me lecture now extensively on the principles of art and design, and now it's time to take quiz 2. And this is a screencast designed to help you approach quiz 2 in the right way, because it's a single question, a long answer question. So you've got to do a good deal of writing for it. I'm going to explain how to answer this question with this example here. This is a painting by an artist named Georgia O'Keeffe, who was an American artist in the 20th century. Actually, she lived to be 99 years old, so I think she was born in 1887 and died in 1986, something like that. This is an oil painting. It's a moderate size. It's painted in 1926, and it's called Pink Sweet Peas. And it is a close-up of a flowering plant. So it's a close-up of a blossoming plant. We'll look at the 6 principles of design, and we'll take them one by one. So first one, this concept of unity and variety. This painting is unified through repetition of shape, and grouping of those shapes. If we look at the kinds of shapes these petals are, we'll see this repeating curve. And you'll see it in a number of different sizes and a number of different orientations, but you'll see it repeated again and again. We'll also see this line, because there's an edge on all of these petals. That's a very linear kind of an edge. And you'll see those repeat, and they kind of carry you throughout the image as well. You also notice that there's a kind of a grouping. These petals are arranged along a vertical stem. And there's kind of this, we sense the stem here in the way this form aligns with this form, aligns with this edge. And so you get these shapes all kind of organized or grouped in that way. Now, it is unified through repetition and grouping, and it's varied through contrast of scale, contrast of color, and perhaps contrast of value. So those things make it different. And yes, we have this repeating shape, these curving petal shapes, but they're at different sizes, they're at different orientations, and they're of different color. This red is certainly an added, I think, variation. It's something that makes it more elaborate and more interesting. The color green makes it more elaborate and more interesting. Having some edges a very light value contrast and other edges having a very dark value contrast makes it more elaborate and more interesting. On to number 2, movement and rhythm. Well, I already mentioned how these shapes are grouped to make this kind of vertical column, and that is also kind of its movement too. We can follow this form to align it to this form and align it to that edge here, and our gaze is carried through the painting in this manner, and that's how it moves. It also moves diagonally. It's easy to connect this edge. It's aligned almost diagonally with this edge. That diagonal is also emphasized here. It's emphasized there. It's emphasized there, emphasized there, emphasized there. So as long and emphasized here, as long as we have a pattern of diagonal lines there, they all kind of correspond to the same kind of incline, then we sense that diagonal movement. On to the third one, emphasis. The emphasis in this painting is right here, almost in the middle, a little bit above. This object is given, or this part of the painting is given emphasis by contrast of value, contrast of color, and contrast of shape. It is those 3 things that contribute to that part of the painting having emphasis. First off, the darkest values in the painting are here and here. They exist as shadows behind this form. I guess this would be the blossoming pea or whatever. Then we have this area surrounded by red. You have this green form surrounded by red, and those are complementary colors. They're high contrast to one another. And lastly, this shape, there's nothing quite as volumetric as this shape, this pod-like form here. These leaf-like forms, well, they're kind of like these paper-thin little planes. But this shape is given more volume. Number 4 is balance. It's easy to imagine taking a vertical line down the center of this painting and then thinking about what's on the right and what's on the left. While they're not exact, they're quite similar. And so there's an equal visual weight on the right and the left. And so there's a kind of central balance, a centrality to this image. It's not literal symmetry, but maybe it's near symmetry. Space. There's no great amount of deep space in this image. There's no real illusion of deep space. This is a kind of a shallow space. You've got this flower. It's in the foreground. You're close to it, and it takes up the whole image. And while we get a sense of some volume of some parts of the petals, the space is shallow. It's compressed. And lastly, scale and proportion. The scale of the painting itself is fairly modest. It's smaller than we are. It's around 4 feet, 3 feet between there tall. I don't have the exact measurements on it. But certainly the flower is painted at a much larger scale than it is in reality. So this is a kind of a close-up, scaled-up image of a flower. So the scale is increased. It's kind of monumental looking. And it's not as if we're admiring the flower from a distance or we're admiring a lot of flowers. We're kind of close in. It's a cropped in image, and we're looking at the anatomy of a flower and I think appreciating its aesthetic qualities as well. Okay, well, I hope that this helps you organize your response to quiz number 2.